buildings in an A20 zone are limited to 35 feet. Also in their proposal package, under resort rules, item number 4 states no stays in one site longer than 90 days. Now, the county commission has discussed this item at a prior meeting, and I think it was Mr. Wilson who wondered if 90 days per calendar year would be more appropriate. This would prevent site hopping. I reference conditional use permit codes 8-625 and 26, in which 825 addresses major campgrounds for non-commercial use. Item B10, it states that no recreational vehicle shall use a campsite for over 90 days per calendar year. 8626, which is recreational vehicle courts and commercial campgrounds, which I believe is what Como Springs would fall under. Paragraph D11 states that no recreational vehicle shall be allowed in the court nor a camp user in a campground for more than 45 days in any calendar year. That's a big difference than per site. And I cite these codes in the past. I think it was the last Planning Commission meeting. And Gina Grand Prix countered me, and if she's listening remotely, I apologize to her in advance if I don't quote her exactly what she said. But she said that you could probably find a code that nullifies another code, or you can ask for an exemption to offset a code, and so on and so on. Well, you know, she's probably right. But at some point, some body of authority needs to step forward and say, okay, enough of the code wars. We're going to stay with this code. And hopefully it'll be a code that protects the health, the well-being, and safety of the citizens who are most affected, and not just an outside financial interest. I want to move on to the really big issue, I think, which is the 100 South access. Now, this is that proposal to shift the main entrance to 100 South, or even making the road a loop road. Now, this was a bad idea from the very beginning. When it became widely known in August, the information spread very quickly, and the neighborhood got quite upset. Let's be realistic. 100 South is a residential street and has the added burden of being a major drop-off and pickup point for Morgan Elementary School. Excuse me. Mayor Gale wrote a very good, strong letter identifying a list of concerns that the city had. And I understand that a lot of the citizens in 100 South neighborhood have sent letters and emails and phone calls to all the commissioners. I don't know how many, but I understand it's quite a few. And then we come to this neighborhood petition right here. 185 signatures on here. Now, we knew that the interest level of this proposal was going to be high, but we were wondering, would the interest level be as high away from 100 South as it was on 100 South itself? Turns out that it was. So we decided to expand the petition area And so it encompasses Young Street to the north, over to Imperial Drive on the south, State Street on the west, to Ridgeline and Red Rock Way on the east. It's a pretty sizable area. So as I mentioned, there were 185 signatures out of 190 contacts. That's a 97% consensus against this proposal. 97%. The political parties these days would die for a consensus like that. Some of the breakdown on this information I thought was kind of interesting. So there were 93 men who signed it, 92 women. The survey, or excuse me, I call it a survey, it was not, it was a petition. 125 homes were represented on this petition. Keep in mind that there are 12 streets that depend on 100 South as their access. 8 of those streets depend on 100 South as their only access. In other words, there is no other way for them. So by any measure, this area represents a pretty significant portion of the city. So that's all I want to talk about. Thank you for your time. Hope you consider these points in your decision.
Thank you.
He's a tough act to follow. I'm Dora Lawrence, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. It gives us no pleasure in pointing out negative aspects of this development. But please consider that we have been adjacent property for 30 years. Enjoying our backyard and deck, opening our windows and doors for clean, fresh air, is a thing of the past for us. So for a moment, prior to your decisions, please imagine you and your family living under the same conditions. Visualize how your peace and tranquility has been eliminated. Consider the RVs that I see from my deck from this enormous development proposal. The noise and the emitting lights that prevent me from enjoying my deck and opening the windows and doors for that great fresh air. Just imagine 72 RVs, 24 cabins, resort buildings emitting LED lights, required property LED lights, and vehicle lights coming into your windows and doors facing this proposed property, proposed development. Now we know that this meeting is about applying the applicable county codes to ensure that the developer is held accountable, and we hope it provides a vehicle to request law enforcement help if it becomes necessary. Allowing extended stays over 45 days per calendar year provides an opportunity to invite the criminal element to take up permanent residence in this resort. Is that what the citizens of Morgan County want? I think not. Criminal elements like drugs, felons, sex offenders. What authority will our law enforcement have when a call of concern about noise levels that reach into my house, and they do? What is in place to enforce the code set forth, holding this resort accountable for what they say they will do if customers do not follow their rules. This is a commercial business on private property. I personally see that different. Maybe it's not. I've tried to read the code. It's complicated. And we have been naive in many ways, but we're trying to get better at understanding the codes and how they will be applied to this cup. We are asking this commission to please give all this adjacent property owners' concerns a higher consideration when applying the applicable county codes to this cup. I might add that on the 45-day calendar year in the proposed improvements on this developer's plan, they cite 8-6-26, which is the recreational vehicle courts and commercial campgrounds, where the 45-day call-out is. Finally, we respect and appreciate the work efforts of this commission, and thank you again for all your considerations of our concerns presented here and other letters you have received from us.
Thank you.
My name is George Newton. I live on 530 Imperial Drive, which is just off 100 South. And I would like to object to the business plan for Como on the grounds of them accessing off 100 South. That whole section is a residential area. There's houses on both sides and people park in front of their houses. I'm sure you park in front of your house. And when they do, if you get a Class A motorhome or a fifth wheel, which is what this place would attract, that's going to really clog things up. Plus, we have the school access. I would suggest that there's a better alternative for this, and that's to use the bypass road between the two freeways. So when if they're eastbound, they get off, they go through the bypass road and go up and go through the thing. Some people might think that that bridge that goes into Como isn't adequate, but if you will remember that was the staging area for the 3Bs when they laid the cement on I-84. And they actually replaced the old bridge with the one that's there now, and they staged their whole contract right out of Como. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
My name's Larry Johansson. I live on 100 South and 200 East. And my concerns for this development up there is, last summer I sat on my porch with a hand clicker and I counted about 160 cars in an hour around 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock at night when people are coming into town. And the school, twice a day, early in the morning and later in the afternoon, I can hardly back out of my driveway because of the people bringing kids and dropping them off on along that street. They park on both sides. There's a lot of traffic there. But my real concern is if you shuttle traffic from State Street down to 100 South and turn left to go up 100 South, there's no crosswalk out there yet. The state hasn't put one, and you've got all these children trying to cross State Street. You got all of these heavy vehicles and construction things and whatever else is going to be going up there to service that project. And those kids are going to have hard time trying to get across. They usually wait for a gap and then they sprint across the road. And you're just gonna magnify the problem, and you got big trucks that are gonna have a harder time slowing down. I drove up and took our mayor up there. And even if they didn't take the bridge into Como, they could go over the new bridge that's there towards the golf course. And there's an access road there, a stop sign not far past that. They could turn right and go in and access that whole place through the back of the property by dumping a few loads of gravel. And they could travel down the access road along I-84, go under the underpass, head to the fairgrounds, turn right past the fairgrounds, go over the new bridge and turn right at that other stop sign, and enter that whole property through the back there. And the contractor, at that point, if this project can't stand on its own merit and he hasn't got the money to do the bridge, the county ought to make that the first priority before they allow any construction to go up there. So I would ask them to check that other alternative route that they could use. And if they do have campers and they do have the facility done, I'm sure a lot of them would want to go golf, and all they'll have to do is go out the back of the Como property and head to the golf course, totally bypassing the city, the State Street and 100 South. Because that's a residential road, not a 2-lane highway. And I just think that there's a great likelihood that with all the trucks and traffic going along there, besides any pets that might get run over, I'm afraid there are going to be, accidents, or the likelihood that you could possibly have some child injured between, they come along this road here to access to 100 South, and you got kids twice a day trying to get into Nebco, places for lunch. They try to cross out here, and if you go that other route, there's not a place where a child has to cross the road with heavy traffic. And all that heavy construction traffic could be where it should be, and that's over by the freeway on the access road, go under the underpass where the train is, and head east toward the golf course over the bridge that's already existing in there, and go into the property from the back. So I object to anything that the county commissioners would want to do to try to provide access for this project on 100 South. Morgan City is incorporated. We have our own ordinances and our own people to take care of our own streets, and this is not a county street, it's a city street, and we'd like to govern our own traffic and protect our own kids by not having all that traffic going down through a residential area. That's all I got to say about it. Be wise in your considerations and look for an alternative, because there are at least 2 others. George mentioned one, and I've mentioned a third one. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no additional public comment, we will move now to our public hearing. We have a budget hearing. Oh, we can't do that yet. We have to wait till 6 o'clock. We're going to postpone the budget hearing until after 6 o'clock. That's a state requirement. Anytime we open the budget, it has to start after 6 p.m. So we are going to skip the budget hearing for the time being. We'll come back to that, and we're going to move to action items under section F if you're following along on our meeting agenda. We will start with item number 1, request from our county treasurer to change the county payday from Thursdays to Fridays.
So back in August, we ran into an issue with the banking system not being able to log in and upload our payroll, and so it delayed. We were able to get the issue fixed and get it processed just later in the day than expected. I still would like to keep everything as is, but put in our actual policy book that payday is Friday. That way, if there's any glitches, if we run into any issues, if there's any emergencies along the way of processing it, that it gives us a day and it doesn't fall back on the county if employees are paid a day later, since it is such a quick process to get everything in and posted through.
we have in the policy now that it says Thursday?
I was told yes.
Yeah, it specifies the day, which is kind of interesting that it does, but typically a policy would
that
just say you're paid twice a month, you
Yeah.
know?
That's
Every other
because of the
week is-
4-day work week. That's what they were doing it. That's why.
So what we're talking about is a change in our policy handbook.
Yes.
Any questions?
So you're gonna still try to get it out on Thursday, but
Correct.
it's, it doesn't have to be out until Friday.
Correct. I still plan on everything being the same, the way Leslie and I process everything and work with Cassell to do that. That way it just gives us a day if there are any issues that we can say, okay, payday's actually Friday, you are just getting paid a day early.
Is this the right process to change the handbook?
Yeah, it would have to come before, so we probably ought to see the change in the handbook, or we can just instruct them to make that change. If that's all we're changing is the day that's listed in the handbook, I think we can do that without actually seeing the policy in front of us. But if you prefer to see the policy, we could have it brought in.
No, I just want to make
I
sure.
think we
we're doing it
just
correctly.
went through it just a few months ago.
Yeah, we've seen the policy
Yeah.
handbook for sure.
I think we ought to just be able
I
to
remember reading that. Okay,
say it.
is that a motion?
Sure. I move that we change our official payday to Fridays instead of Thursdays.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the change of the official county paydays from Thursdays to Fridays in the county employee handbook. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is with our planning department and Rod Meekum extension for the Shady Hills plat amendment for a property line adjustment.
I don't know if I need to come up here or not, but I guess if there's any questions on that, it's been approved. We're getting close to recording, and Bailey Smith was worried just in case we ran into our deadline that she suggested that I come in to get an extension. I think our deadline was like November 5th. We do have a Mylar printed. So we're getting close, and that's being reviewed. And just wondered if we could get an extension on that plat amendment, just the property line adjustment. It's fairly simple.
You're just waiting on final approval so you can record, is that correct?
Yeah, we've
Okay.
kind of been waiting on engineering, just making sure we had everybody's requests taken care of on the new plat. Had to go to the health department to get them to sign off on it, to review it and sign off on it. And that's all been done, and the Mylar's printed. It's just not signed and recorded yet. So
Historically, we've done 6-month extensions on land use items.
Would that work for you?
Is
You
that
think 6
sufficient,
months
6
would be-
months?
yeah,
You hope it's not.
We hope you don't need that long, but.
hopefully I don't even need the extension. So, but Bailey thought it would be smart to come in and get an extension just in case. So.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
I know we had discussed this, Robert had discussed it, to try to get that changed in our rules. I don't know if you're working on that or not. So that way, future ones will take care of that. So I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I move that we give a 6-month extension for Shady Hills plat amendment for a property line adjustment.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Gets me every time.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I got a message from Brenda Nelson saying the sound wasn't working.
Yeah.
It's working for me, so
I think it's
I don't know.
It wasn't in the beginning.
if there's anything else that
On the
you need
YouTube?
to check.
Is that on YouTube?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, 'cause I just got-
Okay, we will move to item number 3, discussion decision approval of mutual aid agreement between Morgan County and North Summit Fire District to exchange fire and EMS services as needed. Are there any questions on the agreement? Garrett's not here to present it, so.
I think we've already discussed it.
We've already
There was
discussed this
minor
previously, we
changes.
just had some minor changes that need to be made. Okay. Everybody, yeah, and I think we all understand what it means. Essentially, this is just saying that we agree to go help Summit County, and they agree to come help us, and we won't charge each other back and forth for that additional help when we need it. So we appreciate Summit County and for being willing to enter into that agreement with us. I guess that's the North Summit Fire District, not Summit County. But we do appreciate their willingness to do that. We have similar agreements in place with South Weber and Mountain Green Fire District, and those are much appreciated when we need those. And Weber County as well, thank you. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve mutual aid agreement between Morgan County and North Summit Fire District to exchange fire and EMS services as needed.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
You've got such a deep voice today, Robert.
It's the wonders of technology.
Okay, next item is discussion decision on a resolution for the Morgan County governing body to appoint a representative and an alternate to attend and vote on behalf of the county at the USIP annual membership meeting on November 16th in St. George. USIP is our insurance carrier, Utah County's indemnity pool, and we do this every year. I do plan to attend the UAC conferences and would be happy to attend that.
And I will be attending anyway,
Okay.
because I've
Anybody
been
else?
nominated to be
You
on
wanna
the
do it?
board. So, I'll be there. So I don't care whichever one you want.
Anybody else
I'm on
have
a
a
cruise.
desire to go? You're on a cruise? Jeez, where was my invite for that?
You didn't get it?
Okay, do you have a preference?
Well, I have to be there anyway.
Well, I'm going too, but.
I mean, I have to be to the
with
USIP meeting,
Why don't we
yes.
put you as the primary and me as the alternate?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, do you want to make a
Sounds
motion
good.
on that?
Are you going, Robert?
I am not.
I'm planning on going, but I don't want to do the USIP thing. Let
Okay.
other commissioners do that.
Yeah, you were planning on going to use
I'll move that we nominate myself as the number one representative and Mike Newton as the alternate for the USEP annual membership meeting on November 16th, 2022.
Perfect, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll fill that paperwork out and get that back to you, SIP. Okay, item number 5. Mr. Cook, this is the Como Springs Resort CUP, a proposed conditional use permit for a recreational camp/resort located at 805 East Como Springs Road.
Thanks. This application is 21.014. It was submitted last year. The county commission met on August 2nd. You remanded the conditional use permit back to the planning commission to set a bond amount for the landscape maintenance, as well as to approve a management plan. The planning commission met September 22nd. The planning commission approved the management plan and set the bond amount at $0. With the finding that they did not believe the county should be involved in holding assurance bonds and maintaining private property, landscaping on commercial property, since we don't do it for any other type of commercial uses. It is back now before you to approve the conditional use permit or to review it and make a decision. With that, the applicant is requesting 3 exceptions per our code. Those exceptions are, 1, to allow them 3 years to complete all the improvements, given the fact that costs have gone up. And getting the materials delivered is difficult, so they're requesting 3 years as opposed to the 12 months required by the code. They acknowledge the residents' concerns on 100 South, and they are requesting an exception to the conditional use permit requirement that a driveway of 36 feet be waived, and they would be allowed to continue using their main entrance off of Commercial Street, as opposed to going down 100 South. The 100 South entrance would need to remain, though, for emergency access purposes only. That's what they're asking for an exception. And then the third exception is that the County Commission allow visitors to return after 7 days away from the site, as opposed, so that they only are there for 90 days consecutively, then they would leave and then come back, as opposed to the 90 calendar days. Now, of these exceptions, you can approve all of them, or you can approve none of them. That's completely up to you. As part of this discussion, though, I'd like to remind the Commission that this is an administrative action as opposed to a legislative action. And as staff has reviewed this application, they have met all of the check marks in the conditional use permit, except for technically they meet the 36-foot driveway on 100 South, but instead of using that as their primary access, they're willing to use the Commercial Street access. So while they technically meet the requirement to have a 36-foot driveway, they're willing not to use that.
And how would that be regulated?
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine the residents would be
It just says,
complain-
do not enter one way or something?
Well, isn't it regulated right now by a closed gate?
Yeah, the applicant has put a closed gate across that right now, of their own volition. Now, if you make it a condition of the conditional use permit that 100 South is not to be used except for emergency access purposes only, if they were to violate that, I'm sure the residents of that neighborhood would be calling and letting us know, and at that point, we could revisit their conditional use permit.
So you're,
Comment on that?
so are,
If they use the commercial, then we can't get our fire trucks across that bridge.
that's why they would need the other road
Right, the other road
as
would be
the
left
fire.
For
access.
emergency use
Yes.
only, Boyd.
Yeah,
So that'd be our only way in,
that's right.
Right,
because, so it can't be locked.
correct.
Unless you have a bolt cutter.
Yeah, or needs to be a
Well,
fire
you would need to be able to access it.
Access to this.
Yeah, I guess I thought it'd be, you'd probably want it locked for the general public, but you just get access to it,
So a Knox box of some sort?
whatever.
Kind of like you have keys to my apartments.
Yeah, be the same thing.
Yeah.
To
Is there any,
address- oh, sorry.
Yeah, I've got a question. Back to his question, I know down in Mountain Green, they have a certain amount of road load and all that kind of stuff. Is that gonna be met also? I mean, 75,000, whatever it is.
Yeah, the design of that driveway would have to meet the 75,000-pound load in order to provide emergency
Okay.
access. And
All right.
all of those design constraints and design criteria would be reviewed, and we would make sure that they meet those through the site plan review process, which they have not gone through yet. And that site plan review process will come back both to the Planning Commission and the County Commission.
Okay.
If I may address some of the other concerns as well. The height limit is indeed 35 feet. While this conditional use permit shows what they propose to do, it is not a site plan review or site plan approval. And so when they start going through their different phases, they will submit for site plan review for those phases. And we will make sure that they meet the minimum code requirements, in other words, 35 feet as well. The code does have 2 statements of days allowed for visits. In recreational vehicle parks that are in a zone where it's outright permitted, they're allowed 45 days per calendar year. In our conditional use permit section, though, conditional use permits for recreational vehicle parks are allowed 90 days per calendar year. So while it appears to be a discrepancy, it is not. They're in two separate sections of the code, one for permitted use and one for conditional use permit. What enforcement options are there? If Como Springs goes against the conditional use permit requirements and stipulations, I'm sure we will be getting calls of complaints, and at that point we would send out code enforcement letters reminding them of their conditions and give them the 30-day courtesy notice. And then we would send out another letter, which would be a notice to comply. And after that 30-day notice to comply, if they haven't complied, then we can revoke their conditional use permit temporarily by me and permanently by you, as well as give them to send it to the prosecutor to take, with fines of up to $100 per day, or I think it's Class C misdemeanor. With that, we've reviewed the application. We believe they've met all the requirements that they are required to meet by our code. Because of that, we're recommending approval. I would leave whether you approve the exceptions or not up to you, as opposed to me telling you what you need to do.
Okay, any questions for staff before we
Yeah, I
begin
just,
our discussion?
so a lot of the discussions and a lot of the emails I've gotten is really concerning traffic. And I've been in engineering for 22 years and I've never done a traffic study, nor will I ever. So I'm not going to claim that I know it, that it's safe or unsafe, because that's not what I do. So I guess I would really want to see whatever is decided and how it's moved forward as a traffic study. I mean, the traffic study should tell you what's acceptable or not acceptable for the conditions that exist. And I definitely think, and I know this isn't what we're approving right now, so I want to, again, I appreciate you mentioning this is administrative, so I agree with that. Just want to make sure that those concerns are going to be continually addressed. If the only access is the bridge with the exception of the emergency access, I would still want to say, okay, show us your traffic study on that bridge of the people coming in and out and make sure that we can do it. Or is it too narrow for two-way, and how are you going to do signage, and how is that all going to work? Because we don't know the answers to that yet.
Well,
I don't think we do.
F in our code, 8-8-3F says approval conditions. A conditional use shall be approved if reasonable conditions are proposed. Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone down. Or can be imposed to mitigate the reasonable anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use in accordance with applicable standards. So if you're concerned about traffic, you could add a stipulation to the conditional use permit that as part of their site plan review, they go through a traffic impact analysis or a traffic impact study. Mm-hmm. And depending on the results of that, additional mitigation requirements may be attached, such as widening the bridge or whatnot. But it is in your purview to add additional conditions as part of a conditional use permit.
Yeah, I definitely would want to see that wherever we end up. We really need to understand that.
So my question for you, if we don't allow them access on 100 South, why are you saying to do one on 500 East or Commercial Street?
Yeah. Either way. That doesn't matter to me. Either way, okay. We're increasing an amount of traffic. We're probably doubling the traffic that's coming into there.
Right.
So let's make sure that it works wherever we're getting the traffic from.
If I may suggest, I would imagine that the applicant will do a traffic impact analysis of both entrances to either disprove the current residents, or to prove what they're saying, or to state what needs to be done on commercial. But I would imagine they would study both.
So one of the concerns I have is that I feel like the applicant has presented it as though 100 South has been a an entrance all along.
That's my
And-
understanding.
And
actually.
those who have lived in Morgan for years know that that's not the case. The entrance has always been the bridge. In fact, for a long time, that road was tore up that accessed off of 100 South. My understanding is it's still somewhat torn up. It's been locked for as long as this particular owner has owned the property. So I am concerned that they're presenting it as though that's their access. It's never been their access. It's been an access for agricultural purposes. There are at least 3 diversion dams that are located along that property, and I know that it's been accessed that way by those who use those diversion dams. And that's something we need to consider and make sure is part of their process here, is that the access for those agricultural users is protected. I don't see anything about that in the application and would like to see that. And I don't know how that fits into our ordinance, but certainly I think that's a condition we need to consider. In terms of the width, the current bridge is barely wide enough for a large RV. And I know that because I took my 40-foot fifth wheel across it this summer and stayed at Como Springs for a time during the county fair. So there's certainly not room for two-way traffic. I mean, my fifth wheel was about that far from either side of the side of the bridge. But I also don't know that that's the county's problem, that the bridge is not adequate, and certainly not the city's problem or the residents who live on 100 South's problem. So I am concerned about that, and I think we need to address that one way or the other. And I like your idea of them having a study done on that bridge to determine if it is adequate. At minimum, there are other access points. There's at least one other access point on that back road, which I guess is technically 100 South, but it's on the other end of 100 South, the back end, where there's no homes and no other structures or businesses or anything that they would be bothering. I know that their current layout doesn't show any access through there, but that may be an alternative for them that would be a little more cost effective and not have a detrimental impact on those who live on 100 South and frankly on the school children who access 100 South. So those are just some of my thoughts of things we need to maybe talk about.
They did have a report as part of the document. It's actually just the bridge loading, but it is a 20-ton bridge. So, but that just addresses the bridge loading. It doesn't address the width. It doesn't address all the traffic coming in and out of there. It just says this is the loading for the bridge. So,
I thought I had read in their documents that they had acknowledged that the bridge would probably need to be widened.
Yes, it did say that.
Yeah.
Because if it's got that kind of capacity, it wouldn't be that expensive to widen it as far as being able to,
I don't know how expensive
I have no idea
adding
what
a
cost
bridge
would
or
be.
widening a bridge would be.
No, I mean just the sides of it. If it was a little wider on the sides, sure. If you're going to double a bridge, that's expensive. Yeah, we're going to find that out real fast.
Yeah. I had another couple of concerns in there.
Yeah.
Reading through it, it has for these different homes or these cabins or whatever, some of the sizes of those cabins are bigger than my house. So how can they be, I don't know where and how he's going to fit all that in there. And if he's actually not making it it's not a cabin, that becomes a house.
Well, a lot of our other standards will mitigate that.
Okay.
We have parking requirements, we have landscaping requirements, commercial multifamily, they're required to provide a certain percentage. I believe it's 15% of the entire site has to be open space, landscaping. 85% of that 15% has to be plant material, and that's sizable. You also have two parking spaces per dwelling unit. I think our parking code needs to be updated a little bit because there's not a lot of, they don't break it down at all. It's just dwelling units. And as these would technically be dwelling units on a temporary basis, they would each need to provide 2 parking spaces for each one of them. And so parking space plus circulation drives, that's gonna chew up. Typically, infrastructure and open space will take 35% of an entire site. So the net buildable area is probably 65% of what's there now. 35% will be for infrastructure and open space. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head, but that will lessen how many units they can fit in there.
May I ask a question if you might?
Sure.
Okay, since this is an A20 zone, yet it was a resort before, how is it still an A20 zone?
The A20 zone actually has a recreational park that's an allowed use with a conditional use permit.
Okay.
And my guess is, Blaine, when they enacted, because Como Springs existed as a resort way prior to the 1960s when
1940.
zoning was put in place in the county in the first place, so it probably just wasn't ever zoned as a commercial location.
All right.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, sorry. One other comment. It's just interesting. Sorry, Robert. You know, it's the concern is the access to this property and how that's going to look and work. So it's interesting because we don't have the answers yet, but yet we're saying, yeah, we're okay moving forward with the conditional use permit. So it's not that I'm against private property rights, because I'm all the way for it, and people should be able to do with their property what they're able to do with it. But I am concerned with all the concerns we've had, similar concern of access and how that looks and how it'll work. Definitely concerned about that. I don't know yet, and I don't know if the answer is it doesn't work. So.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that either.
But that's not. But to be clear, tonight we're not approving if it's going to work or not. We're basically approving the applicant to move forward with the process.
The planning.
Right, so this would grant them conditional use to use that property for their plan.
Right.
But then they would have to proceed with the site planning process of it, which would require them to submit construction documents, site planning showing the circulation patterns, traffic, the parking, landscaping, lighting, irrigation lines. We look at everything. And
Yeah, I definitely, I know it was made mention, and I think we've talked about it a couple of times, but would definitely want to look at, in particular, a lighting plan of how that lighting is being, I don't know what they call it, but they can actually see what the light will do and how.
photometric?
Yes, I think we would definitely need to see that, to see how that'll affect the neighbors.
Yeah, I would agree. And our lighting code has quite a bit of, it's pretty comprehensive. It's 8-6-44.
That is comprehensive.
Well, it goes from A to K.
Glad you could remember it.
I'm impressed that you can remember that.
I'm trying to remember them.
Robert had a comment.
Robert, did you have a comment?
Well, I just noticed in the application materials, it's page 11 of the application, page 48 of the packet. It references a trip generation memo that had been completed for the project and shows minimal effect on existing traffic in the area. I didn't see the actual traffic, the trip generation memo itself. Is that something that the planning department has reviewed?
I have not reviewed that. It may have, Lance may have reviewed it before I got here, because I was not aware of that.
Okay. The other thing I will say, I appreciate the Planning Commission's consideration of the management plan. And while we're not maintaining the cash deposit or other form of surety for purposes of assuring the success of the project, the issue arises under our code, where it indicates that recreational vehicle parks are to have adequate and reasonable guarantees. And I think that's relative to the nature of the use itself. And and the fact that to a certain degree, it's almost like a transient multifamily community, and so the code was drafted to have them provide assurances that roadways, storage facilities, service facilities, and landscaping in connection with the project be maintained, and that there be some assurance, cash, a bond or cash deposit that gives the county an assurance that if it's not maintained, I guess it's a fund that could be utilized to bring things up to standard. So I had a couple of comments. First of all, the management plan didn't really do a lot to address those specific things that the guarantee related to. And two, I'm not sure that 0 is the reasonable amount for that guarantee. With respect to the traffic and circulation, I think that if we could add a condition that indicated as part of the site plan approval that the applicant submit a traffic circulation plan together with the traffic study showing or recognizing that circulation pattern that they're recommending in traffic counts and addressing the expansion of the bridge. Let me ask a question with respect to the bridge. Is that a county facility, or is that a private bridge that essentially comes off of a public road and provides them driveway access?
I think it's a private bridge.
It's private.
On one side would be on county property.
Yeah, I think it abuts county property. Yeah, but it's private.
I thought when that was resurfaced, the county actually resurfaced it.
The road?
No, the bridge.
So I don't know about that.
Well, at one time, they took out the bridge and then put something else back in, and that's what this is all about. That's what I was being told from, anyway, a community member.
Probably want to verify that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I don't know if that's a county facility. I mean, it still may be a project improvement as opposed to a system improvement, because the only property that's really affected by that or gaining access over that bridge is this project. So I think it's probably a project improvement regardless, but if it's a private bridge, then it clearly is. I think they said something in their request for exception when they talked about the easel loading of that bridge. It says our attention to future date to address bridge improvements. And it just says, with the property line bordering the county right-of-way and the Weaver River at the entrance from 500 East, bridge improvements to widen or replace the bridge would require extensive collaboration and partnership with the county and the Army Corps of Engineers to accomplish this endeavor. It's our intention at a future date to address bridge improvements. Anyway, what I'm saying is that if we move forward with this application, I think that we ought to include a condition of approval that requires that that expansion needs to be addressed, including the timing of it at site plan, together with a traffic circulation plan and a traffic study that identifies what the traffic counts will be based upon the traffic circulation plan that they propose. If they use that alternative access that you were mentioning earlier, Commissioner Newton, that may affect the way that the traffic counts work and so forth. But whatever they do, I think that needs to be addressed at site plan.
And I did notice that in their application, they're suggesting using that secondary back road access, I'll call it, on the north end to access a couple of cabins as a driveway, but not as an access to the actual development or for RVs or any other access. One thing I will note is, and I believe that the bridge is a private bridge. However, if for some reason it ends up, we find out it's a public bridge, one of the sections of the code actually, I think, addresses that, and that is under the required facilities. This is 8-6-2. And essentially says that Planning Commission shall not approve any application for a mobile home park, recreational vehicle park, or mobile home subdivision conditional use permit if the developer cannot provide required water supplies and facilities, waste disposal systems, storm drainage facilities, access or improvements, or if the developer cannot assure that the development will be completed within 12 months, or if the Planning Commission or governing body determines there would be unusual danger of flood, fire, or other hazard, or if the proposed development would be of such character or in such a location that it would create excessive cost for public services and facilities. Certainly, if it were a county bridge, which I don't believe it is, but if it were, the cost for the county to upgrade or maintain that bridge would be excessive, given the access to one business. So I don't know that that's really an issue, but just noting that I don't know that if that were the case, I would say the conditional use permit should not be approved if it is in fact a county-owned bridge, because I can tell you that the county can barely afford the bridge matches when we're paying 6% on a bridge. And the bridge that we're doing right now, that we're starting in...
Both bridges.
Yeah, both bridges. The bridge that we're starting right now, well, we'll be starting the end of this month into Croydon, is a $7 million bridge to cross the Weaver River. So cost is certainly an issue. I guess ultimately, on a conditional use permit being administrative, we need to look at the code and go through the code and ensure that we're keeping with what's in the code. And our code that's specific to mobile home parks and mobile home subdivisions and recreational vehicle parks, in my mind, is a little bit convoluted because it kind of mixes the three and then it separates out the three. So I've kind of more focused my reading and understanding to the section starting section E. So this is 8-8-6, section E, and it's additional requirements for recreational vehicle parks. And it says, in addition to the requirements for recreational vehicle parks outlined in this section, recreational vehicle parks shall meet the following requirements. Location. Recreational vehicle parks shall generally be located, and it gives 3 places, adjacent to or in close proximity to a major traffic artery or highway, near adequate shopping facilities, within or adjacent to a mobile home park. They're not within or adjacent to a mobile home park, so that one's off the list. That leaves 2 left. One is adjacent to or in close proximity to a major traffic artery or highway. I don't know whether 100 South qualifies as a major traffic artery. I suspect it might, but I don't know. And then near adequate shopping facilities. I definitely wouldn't consider it near adequate shopping facilities if the access is through 100 South, as there's no businesses for probably at least a mile as the road goes from that location. Off of the other access where the bridge is, there are businesses, although not in close proximity. They're near.
Yeah.
And my hope honestly would be that people frequenting that business would come down Commercial Street and stop at our businesses and shop and spend some money. But so those are 3, I guess, things that I think we need to consider. It goes on to talk about landscaping and lighting and surfacing of driveways and one-way traffic and two-way traffic and entrance roads, and the minimum being 36 feet in width. And I know that they're asking for a variance on that. I'm not sure that, to me, the only reason to ask for the variance is cost at this point. Because it's not that they couldn't have a 36-foot wide bridge there. That's certainly possible. There's space there. The question is, can they afford to do that? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But I would say that's a concern that we ought to talk about and decide how we want to proceed. And then again, it talks about the term of rental, 90 days in any one calendar year. I'm not inclined myself to grant any exception to that. I think that's cut and dried in the code, and I think there's good reason for that. So that's my feelings on the request for variances. Any other questions for staff?
No, I have no more.
Okay.
So how do we list all those in there?
Well, I think we need to address those and decide how we want to address those. It seems to me number one is addressing whether we agree with or not the exceptions that they've requested, right? And if not, we should indicate why we don't agree with those. And then I think it's addressing the conditional use permit and any additional conditions that we feel like ought to be imposed. And I also want to be clear, from my perspective, I support the fact that there is a developer who wants to have a business in Morgan County. And I know Morgan County there are those that believe that Morgan County is a difficult place to do business. We don't want that to be the case. So that's not the intent here from my perspective. The intent is ensuring that the business that is done doesn't have a detrimental effect to those who already live here and do business here. And the public, as well as the city, have brought some valid reasons before us that I think we need to address. So, all right, let's talk about the exceptions then. They've requested three here. The first one is that the development would be completed within 12 months.
I can understand that one.
Yeah,
I can too. You
That's
can't even
a heck
get
of a-
supplies in 12 months for
Yeah,
some things
That's
right
a heck of a
now.
lot to do in 12 months.
That is. So, I mean, I think that's a very reasonable request. They've requested 3 years, is that correct? Which is, in today's supply chain world, probably okay. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's fine.
Okay. So, general consensus is we're okay with that exception on the 12-month changing to 3 years. Second exception is the roadways. And that is that the roadways shall be designed to accommodate anticipated traffic, including standards, including entrance roadways, which are a minimum of 36 feet in width. It also talks about sidewalk being needed on all entrance roadways, which I would assume would apply to a bridge as well as any other roadway.
Which they don't have one at this point.
On
would not.
any roadways.
On any roadway.
Correct. Well, at this point, none of the access points that we've talked about are 36 feet in width, including the access from 100 south.
Well, what my question is on that is if we require them in the next 3 years to make that bridge bigger, will it stop the project, or will it, I mean, it's up to them, but I'm just wondering, you barely got across it with your trailer. Others have barely gotten across it. One way or another, they cannot use 100 South, in my opinion, except, well, they can't use it at all. It's for the fire. If the fire needs to get in there, they can get in there on 100 South. I don't think that should be used at all as an opportunity for the trailers or whoever comes there to go into the park that way. It needs to be off of Commercial Street. That's my opinion.
I agree with that sentiment as well.
I do too. My biggest concern is they're thinking of making a through road, you know.
Yeah, and I don't want that.
And so that would have to be, to me, that would be the best way to take care of that would be you know, not being able to use it at all unless it was for emergency services.
Right. That's my opinion.
And that's what they're saying in here. I just,
That they intend to do,
I'm just
yeah.
reading between the lines a little bit and saying, nose in the tent.
I guess I don't even know how to answer the 36 width, because we don't know if the existing bridge is 13 feet in width. I don't know what the width would be, but we don't know the response to that yet. We don't know how that's even going to work, or if they haven't done an analysis as far as the traffic being able to come in and out of it yet. So I don't know how we can say, yeah, we're okay with the variance on the 36 feet right now.
So I suppose one way we could potentially look at this is we could potentially approve the CUP with conditions that we've talked about. One of those conditions being that 100 South is used as an emergency ingress egress. And then they could come back later with more information on this,
On the bridge.
the other access, the bridge.
And maybe they'll redesign a little bit, so
Or potentially use that other
use
access.
that
on
other
the north
access.
end.
Either way, using those other accesses, I've gone through the whole thing, and either way, they're going to have to cross the river. Either way. If they accept, unless they come in off of 100 South.
Yeah, but
So-
the bridge going up to the Round Valley is accessed by RVs already. It's sufficient. The golf course has a ton of
It's a
RVs up
swamp,
there.
but yeah, it could, but they're still going to have to go across the river.
No, he's talking about the new bridge, the existing
Yeah, I know.
new bridge.
I know. And that new bridge, they go across the existing one that goes out to the golf course, then they come back around, and they can get in there. That's fine, they have to cross through somebody else's property to do that. And then, that point, they still have to cross the river. One way or another, if you go out and look at it, there is a point that they have to go across the river. I went out and looked at it many times.
Okay. I thought from what Mr. Johansson was saying, is his recommendation was before you go up on the higher point where it's
Right.
very narrow,
Right.
you can drop down into the site from
Right.
there. So if they come
And-
out of the site there, they come down, they turn left, go across the new bridge, they're not going to have, is that, I'm trying to figure out what you're saying.
It's not, it has, the river comes, I don't know how to explain it to you here, but the river, it goes underneath that new bridge that's there going out towards the golf course, comes underneath there, they can come out and around, but the bridge, I mean, the river comes right up against the old 100 South, the old Round Valley Road, it goes right up against that. So for them to get into the area where they want to put all these cabins and the whole infrastructure of Como, they cannot do it unless they cross another, they're going to have to put in another bridge across the river. Either way they look at it, from that point or any point, that's the way they're going to have to do it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. I can actually see if they go past that bend, they can access it, but regardless,
Yeah.
they've got to show us how it's going to
How
work.
it's going to happen, but
And have a study done on it that tells us,
Right.
from a
I
safety
agree.
standpoint, it'll work.
Either way, 100 South is out, in my opinion.
So, I do.
However they can do it in any other way is fine with me.
I do want to make a comment on that real quick. I just want to make sure we're cautious as far as there are development rights on property right now. So there are big parcels of property, take away Como, that have the ability to develop. Red Rock just recently did. That adds traffic to that road, but that is a right. So they do a study on that road to see what that development is going to do to affect that road. That's a very standard thing. So I want to be also a little bit cautious that the road I currently live on, I don't want more traffic on it. I don't know how you got 97%, it should be 100. I don't know why anybody would want more traffic on the road they're currently living on. You don't want more traffic. So I just want to make sure, though, that the rights that exist, and that study would be done on a bigger development between, I don't know, between the Wilkinsons up at the top there. There's a lot of property up there that could develop. So I also want to be cognizant of that this isn't the only location in the county. There's many other locations, but that's how the process would typically work. It wouldn't work where we say, I don't like that idea. Well, okay, we need to make sure we have the correct studies and everything's done correctly to say why we would not approve that. Would be my thought, I guess. I just want to make sure I make that comment.
If I may add to that too, it's pretty typical for developers to be required to do half street improvements along their frontage. So if the TIA or the traffic impact study analysis comes back and says you need 2 lanes here or a left turn lane, then typically that would be part of the conditional.
Correct.
That would be part of the approval of the site plan process.
But
I think that, if we put that in there,
I think we're all on the same page. We still don't know how they're going to access correctly.
Right.
So,
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I read it, they're not even asking to use 100 South.
No, they're not.
What they're
anymore.
asking to use
Yeah.
is the bridge.
Correct.
Right.
Their issue is that the bridge is narrow, and
it's not
I think it
36
boils
feet
down
wide.
to cost to replace that bridge to get it to 36 feet, which is a daunting task. I understand that. That's probably going to be a large amount of money to get that done.
Although it is something that could be mitigated. I mean, they could spend the money to widen the bridge.
Yes, it's absolutely something that they could do. I mean, I don't think us saying, you know, that's your access is not stopping the progress of the project. It may add cost to it, unfortunately, but I think any development comes with cost. There would be an added cost if they were to request and we were to grant the use of 100 South. There would be a substantial added cost to improve that access as well. It's certainly not 36 feet at this point.
Right.
And that's a pretty long road, and it would have to be paved the entire way, according to what I read in the code. So the truth is, that might end up costing more than a bridge upgrade,
That's
frankly. But, and if they can be creative on a access from the back that maybe is a little more cost effective, that might work to mitigate the traffic issues.
I don't see how you're going to do it.
But that's for the developer to determine, I guess, and not for us to decide.
I'm cautious of that particular variance, I guess. I'd want to see more information.
On the 36-foot.
Correct.
it'd be right behind that diversion dam.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't know that we have enough information to waive that 36-foot requirement. Okay. Any other comments on that condition? Not condition, sorry, exception request. And then the third exception request is the term of the rental, which says that no individual space in a recreational vehicle park shall be used by one individual recreation vehicle for more than 90 days consecutively, nor shall such space be rented or leased to any one individual for a period longer than 90 days in any one calendar year. I personally see the wisdom in that. If this is truly a recreational vehicle park, there should not be long-term residents in the park. And that's the intent of this, is to keep people from staying there long-term. Any comments on that one?
Did you leave us, Robert?
No, I'm here.
Do you have any thoughts on these three exceptions that they've requested, Robert?
I don't have any issue with the expansion of the time period to complete. I may not be as strongly opposed to the 90-day annual limit exception as you are. I think I understand kind of both sides of the coin. I do agree that I think what happens with many of these recreational vehicle courts is that you have temporary workers that are working on a project in the vicinity that will look to locate within a recreational vehicle court, because many of them come from out of state to work on big projects. There was a lot of that during the I-15 construction. We have some major projects going on in the county, and I can see why they would want to include that as part of their market. And I think it would ultimately lead to the success of the project over the long term. And so I understand your point, Mr. Chair. I'm just not as strongly against the exception as you are.
Yeah, you do bring up a good point. There's benefits certainly for those who would be looking for temporary housing.
There are people that are there now that are working at WPR, and there might be some of the other places that might require more. You know, a summer is not 90 days, it might be a little bit more time. I agree, the impact on the ground is not good. Anything more than, you know, in the Forest Service, it's 14 days, so.
I know, but you are going to see $1 million motorhomes in that part that will stay all summer and go south winter.
That's right.
And that's a longer than 90-day period.
Right.
They also have said that they would do background checks and things like that in what they submitted to to mitigate the type of thing that we don't want.
Right. Right.
With respect to the third request for exception, I guess I'm not inclined to grant that either. And what I would propose, if we move forward with an approval of the conditional use permit, is a condition of approval that a traffic circulation / improvement plan for the project be provided at site plan, providing for primary access over the Weber River at 500 East and requiring expansion / reconstruction of the bridge within 36 months of approval, and providing for emergency ingress and egress over 100 South, together with a traffic study demonstrating the viability of the circulation improvement plan and study as proposed, including interim use of the bridge during the 36-month period.
Now that's the Robert I know.
Yeah. Well stated. I can definitely get behind that, Robert. I think that was well said. Adequate request.
Now we've got the petitioner here now.
Okay, so let's talk about then, there's a little bit of a split, it sounds like, on the term of rental exception. Any other thoughts on that?
I feel I'm more like Robert on it. You know, I can see if I was the business owner, you know, I would want the ability to rent to people that can afford to stay there in their nice motorhomes, you know. People don't just stay for 30 days and leave a lot of times nowadays. If you go down to Riverdale and look at those motorhomes that are down there, that's 90% of them are $500,000 to $1 million motorhomes.
That's right.
And they're there because it's a beautiful area. They're older couples. They aren't having parties and smoking pot and doing drugs. They want a nice place to stay that's in a beautiful area. So I see them being a great asset to our community rather than a detriment.
And I can agree with that.
We could also consider, you know, we can obviously just grant the exception, but we could also modify it. We could say 90 days, 7-day break, followed by an additional 90 days and a maximum of 180 days over the course of the year. So you give people a longer period. They have to get up and move for a bit, which is probably a hassle. But at least, you know, the product's moved around the park from time to time, I guess. And if it's highly successful and full, it gives others the opportunity to come in and take the space. So.
Yeah, I'd certainly be agreeable to that. That's
agreeable to me.
Unless you feel like 180 days isn't enough, I don't know.
I think
in some situations
days,
it might be, and in some situations it may not be.
Yeah, 180 days, I mean, like Matt says, we bring in probably better plans.
Yeah, it's 6 months, essentially.
Yeah, not to maybe, well, I don't know.
Certainly allow them to
Someday in
cater
my
to
retirement
snowbirds.
days, maybe I'll just become one like that, you know? I want to stay at a place for 4 or 5 months, and then I'll take off and go south, or
Thought you were
come
in
back
your
here
retirement days now.
Yeah, I am. But I've got an obligation to the county. And I plan on staying here forever.
Okay, so where are we at on this? The exceptions?
The only I don't know if it's an exception, but some of the things that they've got worded in their other thing as far as their management plan, how they're gonna handle this and that and everything else, I think they can do some revisions on that. So when it comes up to for the next phase, whatever, I mean, like they're not gonna provide internet, well, maybe they're going to provide internet later on, or, you know, hey, I have a family of 8 kids, you know, and I want to come there, and, you know, so there's some things in that management plan, I hope that they will go, and of course, if I'm older and retired, I don't care, I'm going to have 2 of us, and that's it, and maybe a dog. So, some of those things I would recommend that you go through before we, but I don't think this has to be done for the conditional use, does it?
No, you can make it a condition for site plan approval.
Okay,
That the,
all right.
that the,
Because the resort rules, that's what it was under, Como Springs Resort Rules. Because there's also a section in here that says they have to pay for fishing $10 per day. The only problem is you also have to require them to get a legal fishing license to be able to fish, even though it's private property, because that's not your, unless it's in your pond. Because if it's in your pond, then you can allow them, but if they're fishing in the river, that's a legal requirement that they have to have a fishing license in the state, because that's the people's fish. Anyway, so I think those things ought to be looked at, because here it says you also have no swimming, boating, or rafting at Como Springs Lakes is prohibited. And, you know, I know in your phase 2 or 3 or whatever of the property, that's one of the things you're going to be looking at least possibly. So those are things that I would say they need to look at, is the resort rules in the plan, at the final plan. So.
okay.
I think I'm looking for a Commissioner McConnell
Yes.
motion.
We're going to need that.
Let me ask one other question. With respect to the management plan, is there any concern about not having the bond or cash escrow requirement? Or I should state it correct, the way the Planning Commission did. They stated the required amount at $0.
One of the issues, I don't see really anything in the plan that discusses landscaping, at least not to the degree that I think it needs to be discussed. And in section 8-8-6E4, it says all areas, landscaping, all areas not covered by recreational vehicles, hard surfacing, or buildings shall be landscaped and permanently maintained pursuant to a plan approved by the Planning Commission. I don't see a landscape plan that's been approved. I think that probably could be a condition of the site plan approval and part of the site plan.
The landscape requirements are in 8-6. I don't remember the exact number in 8-6, but it's in the supplementary codes.
Okay, but it's also in 8-8, and it says that a plan is supposed to be approved. I don't see that a plan has been approved. Okay, so that probably ought to be a condition of approval on the CUP, that a landscape plan needs to be in place and approved. Now, this indicates that it needs to be approved by the Planning Commission. I don't know if we want to just have that addressed by staff, which I think would be adequate, but.
Site plan approval requires planning commission and county commission.
Oh, okay, so it will come back again for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
Chapter 4 of our code requires the land use authority, which in my discussion with Robert McConnell and Garrett Smith is you.
Okay, so it will come back and we'll see that, it'll just be part of the condition, okay. Perfect. Robert, I guess to answer your question, I can certainly understand the need for some type of bond. I'm not sure that, I certainly don't feel like I would even know where to start with an amount or how that would even look.
That was some of the confusion that the planning commission had, and I don't want to speak for them, but the other issue is how long do we hold that bond for? Typically a bond or a letter of credit would be held for 1 or 2 years, it would expire, and then they would renew it, but we don't do that. So we, the county, would hold that cash assurance, but for how long? I mean, do we hold it in perpetuity? What if the property owner sells the property? What do we do with the cash bond at that point?
Yeah, I mean, we do cash bonds or bonding for road improvements and things like that, but it's very specific. You make the improvements, you show that they're good for 12 months, and then we refund the bond, right?
Well, that bond would only be the 10% warranty bond. If they don't do any improvements, but they want to record, then they post the bond for the entire amount of the improvements plus 10%. But most developers, because of the astronomical amount that is, they want to post as little as possible. So they'll do improvements prior to recordation of their plat, and then post the remaining portion of the improvements that they didn't finish, or just the warranty bond.
10%.
And then after 1 year, we refund the entire amount if the improvements haven't failed. But in this case, there's nothing defining those timeframes. There's nothing defining.
Yeah.
You know, what happens if the property sells? Well, now you have a new owner, but we have bond cash from the previous owner. There's just a lot of questions, and there was a lot of confusion.
So what if we did, this is a bit of a wild guess myself, but what if we established it at $10,000 with a declining balance feature, reducing it by $2,000 per year, absent a default, commencing on the first year after completion of the project? So in other words, once they complete, they post the 10, once they complete, then if there's no default, the county inspects, it looks good, then it's reduced by $2,000 the first year, thereafter another $2,000 the second, so after the 5th year, we no longer have that amount. We're just going forward relying upon their operating practices over that period of years.
What if we have to go back in and do something because they don't complete it, or maybe it defaults and here all this is torn up and nothing happens, and we only collect 10,000, is that going to take care of what we have to do to bring it back to normal?
Well, I don't know that we will bring it back to normal, because we're not going to operate that facility.
Oh, that's true.
But
It's not ours.
So the way I would
Yeah, but for
establish
the
the
residents.
amount is what we think with the amount necessary to essentially put it in a position where it's not an eyesore and a hazard going forward. And maybe we can't determine the amount until we see their landscaping plan and so forth.
So what about the letter of credit versus the amount? I mean, can we do a letter of credit thing like we have for other developers and a certain
Is that
portion?
in the code? I thought it was just a cash bond.
Yeah.
That's the only option allowed in the code
Okay.
I
currently.
believe you used to allow letters of credit until the
Housing
situation
crash.
with
I thought we just approved one, just recently.
cash. They pay the amount to us, and we hold it in an account.
Okay.
We've talked about changing it to a
I
letter
thought
of
we
credit. In
changed
fact, I
it.
think we reviewed the code for that.
Yeah, we did. We reviewed it.
And I thought we approved it too.
I thought we did too.
As I recall, we did.
We did it this year. It was after, or before you came, but
Am I allowed to come up and ask a question on that?
She's
and
part of the-
represent the developer?
You're a little late, but I guess we'll allow it. Typically, we would allow the representative of the developer to speak directly following the staff.
Okay.
There
Sorry.
wasn't anybody here to represent,
Then I.
but, yeah,
What
that's
time
fine.
did it
Go ahead.
start at 6?
no, it started at 5.
5. Yeah, the meeting starts at 5.
Yeah, okay, that's regardless.
Oh, go ahead, if
That's-
you want.
that's- So how, is this bond indefinite? The county will hold this bond indefinitely?
That's what we were just discussing,
Okay.
is some options for that. The code seems a little vague in the
Right.
bond, which is one of our concerns. Commissioner McConnell made a suggestion that it would be released at, his example was $10,000, that would be released $2,000 per year over a 5-year period.
Okay.
So I guess that's one option.
So will the county use that bond if the developer doesn't maintain the property? The county will use that bond to go in and do the maintenance on private property, or use that bond to do what?
That's the concern, I guess, and that's the question that we're
Yeah.
discussing is, what does that look like? Is that bond supposed to just be if the developer abandons the project and it becomes a fire hazard or an eyesore, does the county have to then go in and use that funding to, mow down the weeds essentially?
Right.
Or to what extent does that cover, right? Because
Costs are high.
it's river bottom.
Right.
Certain areas,
So there is a section of code in the conditional use permit code that if the developer defaults on the conditional use permit, the county therefore relinquishes that conditional use permit and building permit or business license, and then the developer is responsible to take the property, or before another use can be had, the property has to go back to the previous condition. So that's where there's a conflict in the ordinance, is that there's already a provision for that if there's a default on the conditional use permit. Does that make sense? I
It does.
don't have that code up, so just listening to your conversation, that section of code did come to my mind.
So, I don't know. Again, I don't know that I feel qualified to establish a dollar amount.
I don't either.
Well, can we address it next time? Do we
It
have
could-
to address
I
it tonight?
suppose it could be addressed as a condition as part of the review of the site map, should we decide to do that. And maybe we could look at that other section of code too. I mean, it seems to me that the point is to try to protect the county and surrounding property owners from the property becoming an eyesore or
Right.
a hazard. But it also seems like there may be a way to do that through revocation of the conditional use permit, which would also be
Yeah.
incentive, obviously, for the property owner to take care of that. So I don't know that, in my mind, I would rather go with 0 and not, because of the ambiguity of the code. And then if we have to enact something to enforce a problem, it would be
Right.
the revocation of the conditional use permit, not the bond. But that's my thought.
What does Robert think on that?
Robert, what's your thought?
Robert?
Did we lose you, Robert?
I hope not. He's got
I
a lot
hope
to
so.
say.
We need him.
I just think, I mean.
Sorry, I'm back.
10,000's like I mean,
It's probably not
you
gonna do
almost can't
anything.
mow a lawn for 10 grand.
Yeah.
Not the size of property.
Certainly not 20 acres of lawn.
So that
Sorry,
seems
what I was
like
going to say was that I think that the code presently gives you 2 ways to remedy a problem. One involves revocation of the permit and what was discussed. The other is this bond requirement. I'm a little hesitant to just ignore the requirement, given that it's established in our code. So what I'm thinking is we could impose a condition of approval that the management plan be updated at site plan to articulate the maintenance standards for the roadways, storage facilities, service facilities, and a separate landscaping plan, and that the assurance amount be established at site plan approval pursuant to an agreement, because the agreement has to be approved by the county attorney, it says in the code, with a declining balance feature reducing it by 20% per year, absent a default, commencing on the first year after completion of the project. So that way it's not out there forever. We can establish it once we've seen the site plan. I mean, when we do the other estimates, it's usually an engineer's estimate. Maybe we can get a rough guess of what it's going to cost. I'm not suggesting that we get an engineer's estimate and that this be, 110% of the cost to do these improvements, because they are private improvements. But I think we could at least, once we see it, at least have some basis for establishing an amount other than zero. And maybe at the end of the day, if we're comfortable with the other remedy, we can just set it at zero or some nominal amount for purposes of satisfying the requirement of the code.
I like that approach.
Sounds good to me.
Commissioner McConnell, do you have a code reference for that? Are you looking at that code where, about the revocation? Or the 20% over a span of years?
Oh, no, the 20% is just my creation because the code
doesn't
right,
outline
I think it's 8-8-6,
right.
And it's section 7 guarantees. It doesn't specify a duration.
Right.
And so I just did the 5-year 20% reduction as something reasonable. I can be convinced of something else. And again, I think in part, it's going to depend on what the nature of the improvements are that we're seeking the assurance of completion for. So.
Okay. So you're anticipating that to be a site plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm a picker.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Robert, you had some great
Articulations.
verbiage for I think where we'd like to go here. Maybe if you'd be so kind as to review that again for us quickly.
Okay, hold on one second.
As a motion?
I'll just make it in the form of a motion.
That's great.
I make a motion that we approve the Como Springs Resort Conditional Use Permit application number 21.014 located at 805 East Como Springs Road, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated October 18th, 2022, and subject to the following additional conditions. The first being that the management plan be updated at site plan to articulate maintenance standards for roadways, storage facilities, service facilities, and a separate landscaping plan, and that the assurance amount be established at site plan approval pursuant to an agreement with a declining balance feature, reducing it by 20% per year absent a default, commencing on the first year after completion of the project. The second additional condition being a traffic circulation / improvement plan for the project be provided at site plan, providing for primary access over the Weaver River at 500 East and requiring expansion / reconstruction of the bridge within 36 months of approval, and providing for emergency ingress and egress over 100 South, together with a traffic study demonstrating the viability of the circulation / improvement plan as proposed, including interim use of the bridge during the 36-month period. Third additional condition is that an exception to the 90-day annual occupancy limitation be granted, provided that no individual occupant may occupy the park more than 180 days in any calendar year, nor more than 90 consecutive days without a 7-day period of vacancy, and that the 12-month completion exception requested by the applicant be granted, allowing up to 36 months for project completion. And I guess I'll also include in my motion that the other exceptions requested would be denied, having addressed them in the conditions of approval.
One other thing on that, as you're stating it, you said the egress and ingress is for emergency only? Because you did not state.
Providing for emergency ingress and
Okay,
egress
that's fine.
over 100 south.
That's fine with me.
Are you requesting that he amend it to include
Only,
not just
only emergency
ingress and
purposes.
egress?
Okay, I'm providing for emergency ingress and egress only over 100 south.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, thank you. Okay, we can make a choice here. We can go to our public hearing, or we can continue with our action items. Is there any preference?
I would
Do
like.
you have folks that need to?
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
sure
we
go
go
sure
with
that-
6.
item 6 at least. And then
Okay,
Yeah,
public.
let's
sure
do
that
item
they
6
would
and then
like-
we'll move
yeah.
to our public hearing on the budget change. Okay, item number 6, Commissioner Wilson, approval of the renewal of our contract with Mr. Stewart.
Dave is here. Dave, you want to come up? First of all, thank you for this last year.
Oh, of course, thank you for the
Yes.
opportunity.
We're thrilled to be where we're at right now and moving forward on our stuff. I hope all of you received that and been able to read through it. I don't think anything has changed. Do you want to go through anything with us on it, Dave?
No, it should be the same renewal. I mean, as we had a meeting with Senate President Adams and have had other discussions about this upcoming session and surpluses and the opportunity to increase the pool, if you will, to add projects for funding. And so certainly the goal is always this last session to get the EIS funded, which we did, and then to continue forward and to kind of keep this project moving, to start putting money towards it as far as, and also getting on the prioritization list as UDOT is given additional funds and they start to prioritize. The problem is if you obviously wait till the EIS is complete, then you're a couple of years out because they program out the money. And because this being a year that, again, while we are starting to see a slowdown, I'm sure you guys are seeing it, the state is, there still is a significant one-time monies that they are looking to put towards infrastructure and one-time costs. And so there is a great opportunity this year to kind of continue the momentum that we have and continue to push this project forward.
Any questions on the agreement or for Mr. Stewart?
I don't have any.
Okay, again, we do thank you for the work that's been done by you and associates that have
Yeah.
worked hard on the project, and we look forward to a really good 2023 legislative session.
As do we. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment, and not for you, Dave, just in general, so, but there's probably not a whole lot of public listening, not a whole lot of public here, but the work that, I know we ran the contract through Dave, and he's done a phenomenal job. We had Greg Curtis do work, we had Lincoln Hill do work, and Kerry represents Lincoln Hill. I don't know, I think sometimes it's impossible to have a group like that come together and try and work coherently and make everything work exactly how they want it to. Regardless of that, we just said, go get it taken care of. And so for that entire group and have all of you working your different angles to be able to bring in this money for the county was phenomenal. I don't know if the county's ever seen a lobbyist work like this that has benefited the county to this extent. And the feeling is this is just beginning. The plan is that we continue to move forward, continue to get those funds coming in. But I really appreciate the work that the the entire group is done. And you know, I only know 4 or 5 individuals. You guys might have 4 or 5 more individuals that are working for you. So just appreciate all the work that all of you have done collaboratively to make this work.
And thank you, Commissioner. And I'm remiss, I didn't mention that same thing. You know, obviously, the contracts, you know, but they're subcontractors. I know Carrie's been up here several times, as well as I. And so, but yeah, to be clear, it was very much a team effort. And that's what we kind of, as we identified and looked towards being successful and covering all the bases, because candidly, this was a heavy lift. This isn't, as far as if you look at UDOT and their traffic counts and stuff, this interchange is never going to compete with anything along, you know, the I-15 corridor down along the Wasatch Front, just because, but it's as critical to this community as any one of those projects are. And so they're, you know, if we only ever went purely off traffic counts, we'd only do anything, you know, among about a 20-mile stretch, 30-mile stretch there. And so I think certainly with your efforts and your vision and our efforts to work with you, with the legislature as a group to kind of carry that message and bring that political win, I think, to the community. But no, I appreciate that, Commissioner, because yeah, it was very much a team effort, and I should have brought that up. But yeah, it was something that we worked well together and were able to effectuate and be successful, so which is always nice to be celebrating together in that way. So thanks, Commissioner, for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll look for a motion.
And let me just make one more comment. I didn't see, was the contract in the packet?
Yes, it was.
What page is that on, Matt?
You know, I don't want to do pages like you guys do pages. It's right here in the blacks here.
Yeah, it's not in color.
It's right, if are you wanting fees?
Oh, there you are. What number are you on?
Page 86 is where
I
it
can't look
starts.
off of his because he doesn't have page numbers on yours.
86.
Okay.
86 through 89.
I memorized my packet.
I know there's been discussions on the actual contract. I guess the request I would have is I want to make sure this goes through Garrett, and then make sure any other items that we have to discuss on it, because I definitely want to move forward. There's no doubt in my mind I want to move forward with another year with the lobbying group. They've done phenomenal for us, so I just want to make sure that the contract reads how we want it to read.
So you might make a condition of the approval that the county
The
attorney
Garrett.
review and
Yeah.
approve.
And there's also one other thing here, and that is on it, you have the client as Robert instead of Mike.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, that's the only thing I saw was a problem.
I didn't notice that.
And maybe it needs to be, read maybe Morgan County Commission there, because on the next page on 88, it has the client Morgan County, and then you can print your name with your title. So that would be
Yeah, I
the
think
easiest
we
way to
just leave
take
it as
care of that.
Morgan County.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple minor changes, Dave, and then we can just get that to you, make sure you're okay with them. And
So you
make sure
do you
Garrett
want to just make a motion with the changes and
Yeah.
review by Garrett then?
Reviewed by Garrett.
Okay.
So moved. I don't want to try to be like Robert and get it all completely exact, because I can't. So Robert, if you want to change it.
I'll try.
Okay.
I motion that we approve the consulting agreement between Morgan County,
And
and Legislative Executive Consulting LLC, as written with the changes made of our chair being changed on the contract, and with our county attorney reading through and making sure he's good with everything on it.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Commissioner Wilson, the rest of the items are yours. Are you okay if we move to the?
Yeah, yep.
budget hearing, and then we'll come back and finish
Sure.
those action items. Okay, so we are going to move to our budget hearing item.
I already know what's going to
Our county clerk auditor,
Do
Leslie,
you need to go out?
will address us.
You might need to go out.
You need a quick break?
Do you mind, Leslie?
It's only going to take 5 minutes. for
Okay,
the-
we're going to take a 5-minute break.
He's the only one that needs it.
We'll take a 5-minute break.
All I need to do is stand up.
You know, Mike, it's, this isn't a fun job sometimes.
A lot of tough decisions and tough situations that have to be considered.
Well, especially when, I don't think, I know I didn't understand. I assume you can come in here and people, you can say whatever you want. Well, you just can't do that. I've never been in the
We're bound by
lawsuit business, but
By our own code, aren't we?
yeah, yeah. Bound by things and well, I'll tell you what, down at our USAC meeting, they sure scared me on water. Made me go. I think I'll sell my houseboat to share.
Yeah, we keep going the way we're going. There's not going to be much left in Powell or the Great Salt Lake.
And they're not, they're talking, correct me if I'm wrong, Blaine, but weren't they talking, they're thinking still 10 years, more years of droughts, what they're planning for?
Approximately, yes.
Wow.
But according to the woolly worms that I've seen around, and according to the different, everything that goes along with it, we're gonna have a mild winter.
This year?
But not harsh nor dry. So
Well, let's hope it's not dry.
it's a normal winter.
Is that Farmer's Almanac?
No, that was the woolly.
Blaine's Almanac?
No, that was the woolly worm.
The woolly what?
The woolly worms.
Tosh Connell with the that orders all of the salt for UDOT for the winter, bases it on what the woolly worms look like.
That's right.
What's a woolly worm?
Well, do you want me to show you?
Oh, you mean a woolly, you're talking about, I thought it was a group of people.
No.
You're talking about a woolly worm.
Yeah, I'm talking about those little caterpillar-looking worms that have fuzzies on them, and they've got black, and they've got brown, and black.
Orange.
Yeah, and so, orange. And so the orange, if it's equal, it's basically a milder winter.
I haven't seen one of those
That
forever.
crazy.
I saw 2 of them this year.
That means no winter.
You know what else I don't see anymore is monarch caterpillars.
You know,
Used to
they're
see
an
them thick.
Yeah, I saw them
endangered
back there.
species, is what they are.
But we have a ton of flowers, so.
Monarchs are
Used to hang
endangered.
them in class all the time. I'd be surprised. if
Yeah,
kids could
but they're
find
still,
them.
they're
Agree.
endangered.
It was so cool to watch that process.
Spray in all the pesticides and plant lots of flowers, and then you'll see the
Them come
monarchs
back.
and the bees come back. But don't spray pesticides on
The
everything.
Yeah.
wildflowers need to do them.
'cause it kills
Okay.
all the-
We've had our 5-minute break. We've discussed the weather and the winter.
And let the crowd clear out.
So we are ready to go back
And
to
I wish it was a little warmer right here.
our budget discussion. So we have a resolution before us. This is our quarterly budget adjustment. I just want to say, I really appreciate that we're doing this on a quarterly basis instead of once a year now. I like that we're having a chance to look at the budget a little more in depth throughout the year. Having the access to see it in Cassell has been wonderful. So wonderful things happening. Thank you, Leslie, in your
Thank you.
office for the awesome things that have been happening budget-wise, and appreciate that. So, we have several adjustments. Most of these adjustments are coming from the general fund to other funds to make them whole. We do have one adjustment, several adjustments within the road fund as well, and that's coming from the B and C fund balance.
I sent you a new resolution this afternoon by email. Did you see that?
Yeah, it takes
No.
care of
I
all
was
that.
finally
I did
able
not see
to,
that. Is that different from the one that's printed here?
Yes.
Okay, so I need to not sign that, I need a different.
correct,
Yes.
Julie has the correct one. Oh, did you?
This is the
Okay.
correct one then.
Okay,
CR 22-08.
yes. I
So
was
this
fin-
is the correct one?
The one that I give him to sign.
It's the
Oh,
one
this
that,
one here.
it's the one that was at
Said today.
Yes.
2:21 PM.
I apologize, I was finally able to meet up with Alex today, and we had to do some
Okay,
corrections
here it
to
is.
make it smooth, so he helped me out with this.
Okay.
But it's everything we talked about last time. Pretty straightforward.
Okay, any questions before we move into our public hearing for this? Okay, with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn the public meeting and convene a public hearing for purposes of discussing a budget resolution.
So moved?
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn the public hearing and convene a public meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We are now in public hearing for our budget adjustments. Okay, seeing no public comment, we will look for a motion to adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the public meeting.
I move that we adjourn the public hearing and reconvene our meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Look for a motion on resolution CR-22-08.
I move that we approve the budget adjustment. Is that what it's called? Budget resolution?
Yep, budget resolution.
Budget resolution CR-8-
22-08.
Oh, 22-08. Or 8, right? 08, okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This will be a roll call vote. Commissioner Fackrell,
Aye.
Commissioner McConnell,
Aye.
I vote aye. Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
and Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You waited
Thanks,
here for
Leslie.
3 hours. For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you for your patience. Okay, we will go back to our action items. We're on action item number 7. Commissioner Wilson.
Let me look at which one that one
This
is.
is the Devil's Gang request for the gun range.
Okay, so the Devil's Gang group, when I met with them, they would like to help us with our gun range and doing some service projects and upgrading things and building some things with our approval, making some berms higher and doing some different things at the range that would make it nicer. They do that on a Sunday as a group, and so they just wondered if they could have a key to access it, or if maybe, I don't know if I'm allowed to have a key, and they can just call me and I can go up and let them in or whatever, but
So
I didn't
then,
know what the,
what are they? Devil's Gate? What
they're
are
a gang.
A good gang.
A good game.
So they're a group of people that meet once a month, and they reserve once a month they reserve our rifle range, and they're avid shooters, and they have lots of competitions.
Cowboy action shooting club.
That's right. And so they set up these things, and they do pistols as fast as they can, and shotguns as fast as they can, and rifles and muzzle loaders, and they just, but it's a big deal. I didn't realize it was such a big deal, but they have dues, and they get together and they do service projects and stuff like that. And so they love our range. They love going there because of just where it's at and kind of the being able to be out in the wilderness area, and so they just want to upgrade it. They're the ones that have the like it's an out shed up there that they lock their stuff in, and it's been vandalized, and we've talked about that.
Do we rent it out on Sundays? Is that an issue or a concern?
We don't.
It's not rented on Sunday.
Okay.
So I guess the two thoughts I have, one is I don't mind anybody serving, so I think it's great and a great opportunity. I thought we discussed about a year ago of having a Wi-Fi electronic lock. They do locks you can work through your phone, you can change the code every week, and then whoever's, I guess it's Brett that would be running it.
Oh.
And we talked to Brett about it, but I actually...
I don't even remember that meeting.
I don't either.
I remember that now that you say it. We did discuss trying to.
I'm not against letting them have access. I do worry about getting a lot of keys out or getting a lot of people that can access it, but yeah, I think it's a great idea.
One concern they have is where they're shooting these metal targets all the time, and the berms are kind of low. And maybe you can answer this while we're talking about it. Why do we have a bunch of cars parked up there that are white, that look like cop cars, but seem to just be a big old parking lot for Youngs or something, is what I'm thinking.
I think it was an overflow of when they ordered cars, they didn't have enough parking, and they asked if they could use the search and rescue building, which is separate from the shooting range.
Sure.
And so we said, yeah, put in there, and we'll...
Yeah, that should be getting them moved shortly.
Shortly.
It's already gone longer than we anticipated.
I think one of the agencies that was supposed to be picking a bunch of them up canceled or postponed for some reason. So they got put up there for a while. I don't know.
It just seems like a little bit of a liability on county property. I mean, I know it's not on the rifle range, but it's adjacent to.
Yeah.
And you got 50 trucks parked there with ricochets going, so. Anyway, they were concerned about that they didn't hurt anything over there and wanted to build up the berms and stuff. And apparently some of their people have some equipment and thought that they could.
Sound like great projects, and I appreciate them wanting to do that. I think that's great.
So if they're gonna be doing that on Sunday and we don't have it open on Sunday, is that gonna cause a problem with us since it's closed Sundays? I mean, you guys tell me.
I think that's why they wanted to do it on
I think that's a benefit.
Sunday.
Yeah.
You want to do it when
It's
it's
a good-
closed.
Good idea.
Yeah, because scheduling would have been my biggest concern, that we don't have them show up to do a project and somebody have it scheduled and there be a problem.
Conflict there.
Yeah, if they're trying to do it on a day when it's not scheduled, that seems like probably the best time to do it.
Fine with it.
So I guess from my perspective, I think if we can get to the point where we have a Wi-Fi system, I think that would be even better. We do away with
I
the keys
agree.
completely. Those systems can generate a random code, and then we could just send a code to the person who uses it, and they can even set it so that code only works during certain days and certain hours, so they can't access it just whenever they want.
Kind of like an Airbnb then.
Just like
Yep.
an Airbnb
Yep.
type of a thing.
Yeah, they have them.
And they're not super expensive, so we could maybe move towards that, and in the interim, perhaps provide a key. That
Okay.
seems reasonable, right?
I don't know if they want me to say anything or not, but the high school rodeo club, shooting club, went up and cleaned up a lot of stuff at Rifle Range recently.
That's
They had
awesome.
a fundraiser there on Saturday, and they wanted to look nice, and they went up and did a lot of work. So shout out to them.
Yeah, we
Thank
should
you.
definitely, I'm gonna repeat that so that it can be heard online on the video, if that's okay, Leslie.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
correct me if I misquote you, but the comment was made that the Morgan High School Rodeo Shooting Club recently did a lot of cleanup at the county rifle range, and we certainly appreciate their willingness to do that, and are grateful for those who put in the time. So thank you if you're a member of that club, or if you're a parent of a member of that club, and support that. Okay, shall we move forward with the motion on this item then?
Sure. Do you need approval? I guess you kind of do, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I'll move that I will be in charge of keeping track of the key till we can get the Wi-Fi lock done to allow the Devil's Gate gang to do service projects on Sunday at our rifle range.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Commissioner Wilson, approval of new facility rental for EM, is that emergency manager?
Yeah, I don't know what the rental part of that is. I could have put that in there, I don't know, but I don't know what that would be. I went with Austin up to the facility, and we walked through the whole facility. There's just that one little room.
Search and rescue, is that what you're
Search
talking
and
about?
rescue,
Okay.
yeah. There's only that one little room that could be used for an office area. Doesn't have a door on it, but I think I may even have a door that we could put on there. It's wider than 36 inches, so we might have to frame it down a little bit or something and put a temporary door on there with a lock, since he's going to have some computer stuff and such in there. But he was thrilled. He was thrilled about it. I think it'll be good to have him be able to see what's going on at the rifle range a lot of times, because it is used a lot. I'm surprised every time I go up there, somebody's out there shooting. So I think it'll be a good spot for him, and I think he was thrilled, thought it would work great for him. So if everybody's okay with that, I don't know if we need a motion or approval or anything like that, but
I don't know that we would.
Yeah, I don't know that we do either.
Because that's an administrative thing.
Sounds great.
Yes.
Okay, next item, fleet, handling the fleet.
that was just a discussion, not more than anything. I need to kind of see how you guys discuss how we want to handle that. I don't know how these vehicles were bought before I was in for this. I did notice when I was up there that there's a truck sitting behind the storage units. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
Does anybody know?
I think it belongs to roads, but I'm not sure why or how it ended up. It's been back there for a long time.
I know.
Is it F-150?
Mhm.
Silver one?
No, it's white.
It's white.
It's white?
I think so.
Say the silver ones were road, but
I
don't
may
know
have been
about the
looking
white
out of my left eye.
It's one of the old road, well, it was once a sheriff's vehicle, and then it was given to the road department, and now is sitting up there. So that could potentially be part of the motor pool.
I probably, yeah, if not, we need to sell it, get rid of it, not just have it sit there and rot.
Yeah, agreed.
But, so I just kind of want to know how you see that happening. I did call to try and, well, I've scheduled an appointment to get a hitch put on it, and I'll get with Brett and get the trailer back. But as far as we only have 2 vehicles. Are we just are we dividing it up? Anybody takes any check out? Is there one that's nicer than the other that's going to get used more than the other because it's nicer? We're going to have fights over which vehicle? I don't know how to deal with that.
So I know they were bought with general fund money.
Okay.
So that's, I guess.
So first come, first serve?
Yeah, I think and I don't know if you want to do it electronically or not, but I think you almost have a calendar system where you reserve the vehicle for certain times and dates. I don't think I'd allow somebody to say, I need it for 2 weeks. You'd need to have reasoning behind it, but I think you just have a reserve that you can make sure it's reserved, and then everybody should have access to it to see if it's available or not.
We probably ought to have some type of criteria regarding whether they can or cannot take a vehicle home overnight, things like that. And what constitutes the need to check out a vehicle. You know, there's probably a distance requirement if you're going to leave the county perhaps, or if you're using it for a specific purpose within the county.
Trainings.
Yeah, I mean.
Things like that.
Because there's any number of, I think.
I guess my concern was is she was saying, well, I need that 5 days a week, you know, to pull that trailer around, and all of a sudden you've got.
Then the assessor doesn't have
Yeah,
it.
then the.
Or the treasurer doesn't have it, or
We
whatever.
can't have that.
If that truck's in running order, maybe it's not, and that's why it's parked there, why couldn't you use that truck?
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think that'd be awesome if we
Maybe
could.
it's broke, I don't know what the situation is.
Well, then we ought to get it over to Precision and see what's wrong with it, you know, or something.
That'd be awesome, really.
Yeah.
Because that's a truck, it's,
Why don't you get the VIN number off of it and turn it into Leslie so that Penny can track it
okay.
and see what's going on, because Penny has all that information, and we can track what goes on and
Right.
see whether or not it's even been in existence.
So do we have some type of calendar, like a Google Calendar for the county?
Yeah, we have shared calendars.
You can create one.
Okay. All right.
And as far as ordinance goes, or policy goes, we could probably reach out to a surrounding county and ask for their motor pool policy. Perhaps Weaver
Summit
County or Summit County.
That's a great idea, Commissioner Newton, Chair.
Better than Weaver, because they got all the money in the world. They just give raises like it's out of style. Doesn't matter what we want.
So here's, I texted the secretary of the Weber County Commission and asked her, what were your COLAs? She said, what years, 2022 or 2023? I said, both. I'd like to know what both of them are. She said, our COLAs we received a 3% increase in January of 2022 and a 6% in July of 2022. Our insurance premiums went up, so cost of benefits also hit our budgets hard. We did not budget a COLA for 2023 for our employees.
Wow.
So I don't know where.
I said 11%, came out 9%.
I texted.
For that was for the past year though, for
That's for
2022.
That was for this year.
Yeah, throughout this last year, I texted the Summit County engineer, and he said 4% across the board. He said the cost of living in the county may have gone up 17%. But he said the cost of living wage increased only 4% last year.
So maybe we went too high.
Which we were in line with last year. We did a 4%, right?
We
Yeah.
did 5%
For
last year.
2022.
5%
Oh, sorry,
last year.
5. I thought we did 4. It's
No,
5.
we did 5% last year, and now we're doing 6 this year.
6 this year. Okay,
Okay, I'll get working on that with that guidance then.
wonderful. Okay, approval of the fire engine agreement. Got here. So essentially, this is a purchase order for a new fire engine, pumper engine. Our current first out engine is 30 years old this year, so we're probably well overdue for this. But it's a large dollar amount. $635,000 is the dollar amount. They will finance this. It'll be approximately $80,000 per year. This agreement is basically just saying we're agreeing to buy it at that price. It will not be delivered until they've told us delivery within 15 to 16 months of order date. and the first payment won't be due until then. So the first payment is not going to be due until 2024. But
Actually, April of 2024.
April of 2024.
It's
Okay.
going to probably be more like 2 years to actually get delivered.
So technically, we can't even say we've budgeted for this.
But if we sign the contract now, it'll lock us in on the interest rate and
the
we're gonna
price.
have a
And the
big
price.
increase.
Yeah.
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 I guess one thing to note, if for some reason we decide to cancel this after it's been accepted by the manufacturer, then we're on the hook for 10% of the cost. If we cancel after they've completed the drawings, we're on the hook for 20% of the cost. And if we cancel after they've started buying materials to build the engine, because these are built to order individually, we're on the hook for 30% of the cost. So there is that item here. Any questions on the agreement?
No.
Okay. That will look for a motion then to approve the agreement for purchase of a fire engine.
I'll move that we approve the contract for the purchase of a fire engine to replace our 30-year-old fire truck.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Robert, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Any opposed?
In favor.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. And then the last item, Commissioner Wilson, on the fee schedule, that was the one we were going to postpone, is that correct?
That's the one Garrett recommended.
Garrett recommended we postpone.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Email at 11:30 today.
Yeah. Said that he recommends us to postpone it until we actually go over some different things within that.
Okay.
Okay. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, well, he told me what he wanted last time, and I changed those 2 items, and so I didn't know.
Well,
Maybe.
He must have had something else.
Well, I thought he said, I can't remember reading it, but
Yeah, he sent an email that talked about a change in the state code that requires.
Just recently.
I read it briefly, but it looks like it requires us to get fee schedules approved by the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Oh, wow.
and it has to be a public hearing also before we change it. So that's
All right,
another
there.
item.
Okay, 11:39.
Okay.
looks like you're going to make
So
a
we
trip
will
down to
postpone
the-
item number 11 until our next meeting.
Then we'll have to go and have public
And we'll
hearing
have a
that
public
time.
hearing for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Fackrell, Commissioner comments. Do you have anything?
Yeah, our trails plan is moving along. Should be completed sometime in November, or at least preliminary plan, because then it has to come to some public comment times. The tourism grant time is right now, and we're working on some of those grants. And I attended the One Utah Summit last week, and very informative, being with the governor and the lieutenant governor and Sean Bradley and a few others. It was very informative, and just a lot going on right now. My head's spinning.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your work in all those areas. Commissioner McConnell, do you have any comments?
I do not, thanks.
I do not have any comments. Commissioner Wilson, or Anderson? sorry.
No, I do not.
Okay, and Commissioner Wilson?
I don't. I meet with, I guess I do. I don't, but I do.
Yeah.
That's what my wife does. I meet with Melissa Freegang on Monday, and she's going to make some proposals on how to spend our opioid, and I'll present. And she was going to come up, and we'll present them together. But
That's great. Cool. All right. If there are no other items, we'll look for our favorite motion of the night.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess we don't need to have opposed.
We don't have
on
an
adjournment.
opposed.